Prefab is a topic so thoroughly discussed over the past 10 to 15 years that many, including myself sometimes, start to kind of tune it out, glaze over when it's mentioned. But after talking to Todd Grossweiler, Executive Vice President at Allison Smith Company, LLC, about their approach to prefab, I wondered, if we should maybe start thinking of prefab not just as yet another process to complete projects, which it is, but maybe we start to think of it more of as a vehicle to improve company culture. And I have three reasons why I say that. So one, to build a great prefab process, it seems to me that you need to involve the entire team, which increases employee buy-in and engagement. If it's done well, it can improve the working conditions of employees, which can ultimately improve job satisfaction. And three, a good prefab process can help the company run more efficiently, which can lead to a better bottom line, help the company win more business, which helps the overall health of the enterprise for all involved. Todd Grossweiler has been with Allison Smith Company for the past 22 years. Todd graduated from the Georgia Institute of Technology, where he received a bachelor's in electrical engineering. He continues to seek out ways to innovate through processes, technology, and people. Maintaining good relationships with both his internal team and external customers is the foundation of his success. And Todd believes that if you surround yourself with good people, then good things will happen. I sat down with Todd on the NECA convention showroom floor, and our conversation with him really energized me. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and welcome to Keeping the Lights On. Let's get into the show. So I like to start out each show, Todd, with asking, because talk about the meals that bring us together. So if I were to visit you in your hometown, where might you take me to eat, and why did you choose this?
I'm glad you picked food as a choice because I plan my day around food. If I were to start breakfast, it would be Waffle House. We'd get some hash browns scattered, smothered, and covered. And we'd enjoy a good cup of coffee and a conversation. If I were taking you out to lunch, I might take you to one of my favorite sandwich shops in town, Muss & Turner's. They have a nice gourmet sandwich. And for dinner, I just might have you over to the house.
Oh, that'd be great. What do you think I might get served at your house?
Probably some kind of seafood.
Oh, great. Okay. Would you be cooking, or the whole family? Or
my wife and I both enjoy cooking, so we'd take the team approach.
Well, I like that. Now, you're the third person that's mentioned covering every meal, so I got to make sure I visit you first so I can get every meal covered. So I like to, we talked before this to kind of, get to know what the topic is we want to talk about. And so I looked up the Waffle House, obviously I'd heard of, but I looked up the Muss & Turner's. That looks like an amazing place. I did not use Google Map to look up at your house or anything, but I'm sure that's amazing too. But I think one of the characteristics definitely of the Waffle House, because they're all over the place and they've had that same footprint, forever. And it was interesting while I researched, just kind of looking into their business and all that. I think one of the things that people like about that place specifically is the consistency and comfort of knowing what you're getting.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure Muss & Turner's is probably the same way, or you wouldn't go and call that a place you'd really want to visit. So to kind of tie it into our topic, when I think of prefab, I think about consistency and a business comfort, for lack of a better word, of having a bit more control over the end results. And so Allison Smith is a subspecialty contractor known for their excellence in prefab services. And, because you often, I think you may have done it here this year at the NECA show, you often speak and share insight with the industry about how it's impacted your business. Now, many have tried it. You can almost ask almost every electrical contractor in the show, have you done prefab? And all of them could probably say, yes, I tried once at least. But there are a lot of hurdles to really begin to notice the benefits. So what helped Allison Smith move through those struggles to start seeing the positive benefits?
Well, we talked about food and being a way to bring people together. It's the people side of the equation that I think most find difficult in prefab. There's a lot of misconceptions from the field labor force that we're taking jobs away from them, when in actuality we're able to get more work and make the schedules more efficient for them and the management of their workforces in the field a lot easier by having that controlled environment to put together some better packaged stuff and save them some time to make them more efficient in the field.
I think prefab kind of aligns with some of Allison Smith's work priorities. So what are those priorities, and how does prefab fit into that?
So our priorities are safety first, quality second, and production third. All three of those things are very important. If we're not doing all three, we're not making money and we're not staying in business. Yeah. But we do want to focus on safety being first, bringing a good portion of our fabrication or installation task into a controlled environment like a shop allows us to have a clean, controlled environment that really ramps up the safety that we have for our individuals. Also a huge bonus to the quality control we have. Everybody's working in ergonomic tables. There's supervisors on hand to check what they're doing each step of the way. And then when it gets sent out to the project sites, that's where we gain the production.
So you mentioned a little bit, and this is something I hear when I talk to contractors about this, but I think there's been there at some points there was resistance for adopting more prefab, maybe from project managers or the electricians. How have you overcome some of these objections?
It's important to have buy-in from the top down, but at the same time, you want to find people at the different layers that you're working with that can be the champions for that group. So if it's the field teams, find the grumpy old electrician that's used to doing it the old way, convince him that prefab's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it'll take like wildfire.
When we talked before, you talked about something about the field being your customer, and it wasn't something you expected. Can you talk about that, like the field and shop communicating and working together better because of prefab?
Yeah, as we grew into our expanded prefab, we realized that we're servicing our electricians in the field by giving them a product, and they're expecting a certain level of service to be successful. So our individuals that work in the prefab shop, from our shop manager to we have people that were formerly field leaders for us and working as what we call our EID techs, electrical installation drawings is what the EID stands for. But they help lay things out, figure out what we're going to be able to prefab on a lot of these jobs, and help put the bill of material together.
Okay.
Well, they also serve as our customer success representatives. So that constant communication back and forth with the field. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's coming out. Here's what you should expect. And if it's a case where we might have a first-time supervisor in the field that's getting a prefab order of something that he's never seen before, we'll send those EID techs out into the job with the first order and have them run through how everything's been put together and help with some of the install.
Can you maybe share a couple examples of some of the successes you've had starting out?
Sure. For those that are trying to think of getting into prefab, start small. So we do a lot of tenant interior renovation, and there's a lot of repeatable tasks with wall rough in. So our early successes were all around the things we were doing for wall rough in. There's a lot of different pieces and parts that people will assemble out in the field that it works, but when we can do that inside the shop and send them out bigger buckets of things to install, it really has improved our process.
Okay, great. One of the struggles that's talked about consistently and still is the tight labor market, especially for highly trained labor like who you all hire to get the job done. How can prefab help a contractor with finding new team members?
It serves as a great training ground for us. We certainly want some experienced people to lead the crews inside the prefab shop, but we'll get much lower skilled labor coming in, not that they won't become skilled. It's an opportunity to teach them the different products we're using, the different tools we're using, and the kind of layout and planning too. It's something that a lot of apprentices might miss if they're only out on the job site. They get sent to do something and don't get that close interaction with how things are being planned out.
So kind of based on what I'm hearing and kind of looking at your website and spending some time there and some of those talks you give, it seems like creating an efficient prefab process can help create a better company and employee culture. So I am curious, what are your thoughts on the impacts that prefab's had on the culture of Allison Smith?
Well, it helps support what our core values are. And our first core value is care, second, leadership, third, success. Implementing all of those core values and living them through our prefab shop kind of just helps sell the message to the rest of the field. And certainly we support those in other ways and things that we do, but their prefab is one of the ways that we show it.
Okay. Well, so you talked about this a little bit. Usually a company with a winning culture, there's some sort of atmosphere of continuous improvement. So how does Allison Smith look at continuous improvement within the realm of prefab processes?
We're constantly looking for more and more things that we can do to prefab. And sometimes we try things out and they don't work. But in any growth, there's going to be some hurdles and hiccups. We understand it, but it's part of the process. And things that may not work out now could work out later. But we give everything a fair shot and know when we need to move on if it's not the right thing.
Well, I think one of the things that you hear about with companies with good culture and continuous improvement is that it opens the doors for more communication back and forth from field to management to that level, which is great. And I feel like it gives some empowerment to that person in the electrician that just started could maybe even offer some insight about why don't we do this? Because you've done it the same way for years. So can you talk a little bit about maybe one of those feedback you might get is pre-planning? Like what role does that play in it, and how has that improved the way you all do work?
It's huge. We very often get released on projects and are asked to be there like the next day. But if we can send out crews to get started on the initial temporary power and lighting and have our prefab shop help out with some of the wall layout and pre-planning for that, it allows those field crews time to focus on some of the other stuff. And when they're ready, they don't have to plan it. The planning's already been helped out.
Some of the, maybe more, I like what you said about start small so you can start to see some successes. Maybe one of those areas might be with, and I think you talked about this a little bit, pre-populated labels. Like, I mean, what kind of, it seems like a very simple thing, but how does that, give an example of that?
Yeah, so we want to find the most repeatable task and even some of the administrative tasks, like labeling, and see what we can do to make that easier for the men and women in the field. Years ago, I got frustrated with the process of an electrician carrying around a P-Touch labeler and labeling outlets one at a time. So you go to one outlet, you type in the circuit number, you print out the label, you put it on. Well, you go to the next outlet, it's a different circuit number. So you type in a new circuit label, you print it out, you put it on. Well, when you're labeling receptacles, most of them they're all known because you have the drawings. And you might have 6 or 7 outlets that had the same label. So I just said, all right, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. Self-addressed labels, the sticker kind, you can go ahead and get a sheet of those, populate them all with 6 or 7 of every circuit number. If you don't use them, no big deal, but you got them there, just peel them off, stick them, and it saved that little typing time.
Yeah. How about some more complicated tasks, stub ups or thing like what have you seen in that area?
So yeah, we do a lot of duct bank work on ground up projects. So think about the process of putting a bunch of conduits together in a ditch. Straight sections are not too bad, but all of a sudden you have a bunch of 90s or offsets and you've got to come up and hit an exact location. Well, we can fabricate those things in the shop, build a cage around them so it's supported, and then take that whole assembly and drop it in the ditch and greatly minimize the time that our men and women are playing in the mud.
Right. Fun when you're a kid, not so much fun when you're trying to do your job. Do you have any other words of encouragement to contractors, thinking about prefab and how they can move forward?
If you're not doing it, but you've got to select the right people to do it for you. The most important person is your prefab manager. That individual, gentleman or lady, is going to be your salesperson. They're going to communicate with the teams in the field and make sure that their customers are happy. But you also need to have buy-in from the rest of your management in the office too, from the executives to the project managers. Other people are going to have this on their project. They're going to show successes, and if everybody can share those successes, that's how you grow it.
I know one thing that comes up is people say, I don't know if I have the space to do it. How would you address that?
Again, start small.
Okay.
Wall rough-in's a very limited space requirement. Or, people prefab for years, maybe not called it that, but people set up areas on job sites, work tables. That give your installers an opportunity to work in a better controlled space, a more comfortable space to put some of these little assemblies together. We started with just 2 tables back in our warehouse. So most people have some warehouse space, get 2 tables and start it there.
Right. So I always like to close out each conversation by refocusing on the why of what we do. So Todd, what motivates you to do this day in and day out? What keeps you excited and passionate about what you do?
The people is what keeps me motivated. I love working with all of the different crews that we get to work with, our internal customers, our employees, our external customers, the clients we work for, and I like solving problems. So both for our internal and external customers. That's what keeps me going almost 25 years into it.
Okay. Well, Todd, thank you so much for being here. It's always great to have another Todd on the show. It's been great, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Todd.
Well, that was my conversation with Todd Grossweiler, Executive Vice President at Allison Smith Company, LLC. You can connect with Todd and what he is working on by heading to the links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, you can help us grow by subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating in your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time.